Have you ever felt like life is trying to tell you something, but instead of shouting, it only whispers? Maybe it's in the quiet late hours of the night, or in that moment when the kids have grown up, the house is quieter, and the heart more tender. There comes a time when the noise of the world no longer makes much sense, and the soul begins searching for something more. If you're in this phase, if you feel like time has rushed by, and now all you want is to listen more deeply, live more lightly, and feel more profoundly, this video is for you. Because life keeps speaking, and even when it speaks softly, it carries answers that only a mature heart can understand. Today, we'll walk together through deep reflections that don't just touch, they transform. No matter how many years have passed, there is still beauty to be discovered. There is still love to be lived, and there is still time to hear what life has been trying to tell you. Take a deep breath, quiet yourself within, because when life speaks softly, we must listen with the heart. Silence is not absence, it is deep presence. Some fear silence. They see it as emptiness, loneliness, or abandonment. But those who have walked through many winters of life know silence is not absence. Silence is presence. A presence so intense, so full of meaning, that it can only be understood when we leave the outside world behind and dive deep within ourselves. It is not a dark void, it is sacred space. A place where the soul can finally breathe without hurry, without masks, without the demands that time and society have placed upon us over the years. It is in silence that memories visit most clearly. The voice of someone who's gone, the scent of childhood, the sound of a laugh that still echoes in the heart. And it is also in silence that we rediscover who we still are after all the changes. When the noise of the world fades, we hear our true voice, the one that was always there, but that we so often set aside in the name of duty, busyness, and others. It takes courage to dwell in this space, courage to be with yourself, undistracted, to accept what arises, old emotions, regrets, desires still alive. Silence does not deceive, it reveals. And that's why many avoid it, because it forces us to look deeply within. But here's the truth. It is this very depth that heals, that comforts, that transforms. How many times have you sat in your favorite chair, gazed out the window, and stayed there without a word? Someone might have thought you were alone. But you weren't. You were in the company of your own story. And that, dear listener, is one of life's greatest treasures, to be at peace with yourself. In your own presence, that is the true wealth of maturity. Silence is not lack, it is fullness. It is like an old sage. It does not impose, it does not invade. It simply waits. And when it senses the heart is ready, it speaks not with words, but with sensations, with insights, with a peace that comes slowly and settles in unannounced. It is in this state that we understand the value of a calm gaze, a deep breath, a moment free of demands. The world taught us to run, to produce, to speak, but it taught us little about stopping, about simply being. Silence re-educates us. It shows us we don't need to prove anything, that we don't need to fill every minute with tasks, that sometimes what we need most is just to sit, listen to the wind, feel time pass, and remember we are alive. If life has been speaking more softly to you lately, don't be afraid. Maybe it just wants you to truly listen. And so, it turns down the noise, closes some doors, slows the pace, so that finally you can hear what is yours alone. Your truths, your old dreams, your deepest questions. All of this lives in silence. All of this is you. So when you feel alone, remember, silence has not abandoned you. It is there to embrace you, like an invisible hug from life itself saying, you don't have to run anymore. Now is the time to feel. And when we learn to listen to this silence with the heart, life changes, because deep down, it never stopped speaking. We were just listening with the wrong ears. Wisdom lives in stillness. Life in its hurry, often taught us that we had to rush to achieve, rush to conquer, rush to become someone, and for years, maybe decades, we obeyed that command. We woke up early, juggled 1,000 things at once, gulped down meals, solved problems that weren't ours, and still fell asleep thinking about what was yet to come. But now, with grayer hair and slower steps, we begin to see that true wisdom was never in speed, but in stillness. Wisdom doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't show off. It simply reveals itself when we learn to listen to life attentively. It's in those moments when we look at something simple, like the sway of a tree or a child's unsteady steps, and suddenly understand everything without needing to say a word. Stillness is the cradle where wisdom rests, and only mature hearts can recognize it. It's curious how only after so much time do we notice what once went unseen. The way someone looked at us, the silence of a father that spoke louder than words, the patience of a grandmother who seemed to have all the time in the world to listen to our stories. All of that was wisdom. But only now do we understand. Because now we too have become those who observe instead of react, who listen instead of judge, who take a deep breath before acting. Haste blinds, stillness reveals. Stillness teaches us that we don't have to fix everything. That some pains don't ask for solutions, just presence. That some people don't want advice, just to be heard. That some situations in life don't demand effort, but acceptance. When we stop fighting time, it becomes our ally. And in this slower rhythm, we begin to see clearly what was once blurred. The wisdom that lives in stillness also teaches us not to waste energy, to choose more carefully the battles worth fighting, to understand that not everything needs to be said, not everything needs a response, and that silence, too, is an answer. There comes a point in life when you no longer need to prove you're right, you just want peace. And peace only grows where stillness is nurtured. In youth, strength was in the muscles. Now strength is in the quiet mind, the patient gaze, the gesture that embraces instead of confronts. What once seemed like weakness, pausing, waiting, listening, we now know is just strength disguised as kindness. Wisdom is this, learning to choose serenity even when the world insists on stirring storms. And don't be mistaken, living with stillness isn't living slowly. It's living with presence. It's being whole in what you do, even if it's something simple. It's eating breakfast without hurry, walking for pleasure instead of running to lose weight, listening to a grandchild's story, even if it's been told before. It's knowing that the only time worth counting is the kind that has soul. So if life has been asking you to slow down, listen. It's not weakness, it's an invitation. An invitation to access the richest part of yourself. An invitation to finally hear what the noise once drowned out. An invitation to dwell in the wisdom that only time and stillness can offer. Listen to the invisible details. Over the years, we learned that life isn't in the grand achievements everyone applauds, but in the small details almost no one notices. And more than that, we learned that details aren't just seen with the eyes. Many of them can only be heard with the heart. It takes sensitivity to catch the beauty hidden in the subtle, the quiet, the seemingly insignificant. But it's there, exactly there, that life speaks loudest to those who are listening. Remember that time someone made your favorite meal without you asking? Or when you got a call on the day you were unusually quiet, and you couldn't explain how much it meant? These are small gestures, almost invisible, but they carry the weight of affection, of care, of presence. They're like whispers from fate saying, you are seen, you are loved. And for those of us who've lived through many seasons, who've faced loss, who know the silence of absence, noticing these details becomes even more precious. Because we no longer seek crowds or grand spectacles. What we long for is the depth of a sincere gaze, the simplicity of a conversation with soul, the richness of a real moment. A gesture from the heart is worth more than any rehearsed words. Sometimes, the detail is in the way someone holds your hand, in how a child curls up in your lap with trust, in how the family dog sits at your feet and just stays, asking for nothing, simply existing beside you. All of this is life telling you that you matter, even on days when you feel forgotten. But to notice, you must be present. You must slow down, quiet your thoughts, keep your heart open. The invisible details are also in nature. In the song of a bird that always visits the same window. In the scent of damp earth after rain. In the warmth of the sun gently touching your face on a cold morning. When the body slows, the soul awakens. And then you realize these simple moments carry immense wisdom. They whisper, "You are here," and that is enough. With time, we learn that we don't have to make noise to be heard. That there's a kind of communication beyond words, one that happens between souls. A lingering hug. A comforting silence. A smile at just the right time. These are ways of speaking without voice. And it's these gestures, these details, that slowly heal wounds, restore affection, rebuild connections. Listening to the invisible details is also an exercise in gratitude. It's recognizing that even on ordinary days, there are hidden blessings. The warmth of coffee you brewed yourself. The sound of a home still breathing. The scent of your pillow at the end of a long day. These are threads in the invisible fabric of existence. Delicate strands that, when woven together with attention, create the tapestry of real life. The kind that doesn't appear in photos or on social media, but lives in the heart. So if life seems quiet lately, if the days feel the same, maybe you've been looking at the scenery, but forgetting to listen for the details. They're there. In every small kindness, in every good memory that keeps returning, in every sunrise that insists on arriving. The secret isn't in searching for something new out there, but in seeing with more depth what's already within and around you. And when you start listening to the invisible details, everything changes. Life takes on a new color. What once seemed insignificant overflows with meaning. Because those who listen with the heart live slower, but far more deeply. And that quiet intensity is what gives our days their true weight. Pain also speaks softly. Not all pain arrives with noise. Some simply settle in slowly, as if trying not to disturb. They don't shout, don't impose, don't make a scene. They are silent. They arrive gently on a cloudy evening, on a night, when the pillow feels colder than usual, or in a sigh that escapes without explanation. And it's in that silence that they quietly take root. Some have even lived with us so long they've become part of the scenery. But the heart always knows when something hurts. Over the years, we collect stories, losses, goodbyes, disappointments, and longings. Invisible scars that still ache from time to time, even after so long. And because many of these pains were never given space to be spoken, due to lack of time, pride, or fear, they learned to speak softly. And they still whisper today, sometimes as weariness, other times as anxiety, sometimes as tears that rise without reason. But the truth is, all pain wants to be heard. Yet to hear pain, we must pause. We must create a safe space within ourselves, where it can emerge without guilt. Because some wounds only heal when they're embraced, not fought, not denied, just acknowledged. As if saying, I know you're there, and it's okay. When we do this, something shifts. The pain quiets. It no longer needs to scream for attention. Because finally, someone listened. Some say crying is weakness, but it's not. Crying is one of the most honest forms of healing. It's when the body and soul unite to release what the heart can no longer carry alone. And no matter your age, it's never too late to tend to what's been stored away for too long. Never too late to look at yourself with kindness. To tell yourself, you did the best you could, and that's enough. Maybe you've lost someone who was your safe harbor. Maybe you've faced a disappointment that still stings to remember. Maybe you've made choices you now regret. All of this is part of it. Life doesn't spare us pain, but it always offers us the chance to reframe it, to turn what hurt into wisdom. And more than that, to understand that even pain has something to teach us. The soul's pains aren't punishments. They're invitations. Invitations to compassion, to forgiveness, to reconnecting with what truly matters. And when we accept that invitation, even with tears in our eyes, we take the first step toward healing. Because pain only rules us while we avoid it. When we face it with courage and tenderness, it begins to lose its grip. And if you feel there are still pains living inside you, don't be ashamed. You're not alone. All of us in some way carry wounds. They're what make us more human, more real, more connected. To speak of them, even if only to yourself, is an act of self-love. A way of saying, I deserve peace. Finally, remember this: the deepest pains don't ask for haste, they ask for presence. They don't demand answers, just listening. They don't want judgment, only acceptance. And when you choose to listen to them, calmly, with an open heart, life slowly grows lighter. Not because the pain has vanished, but because now it has a place. A place of respect, of learning, of understanding. Pain, when heard with the heart, stops being a weight and becomes wisdom. The voice of intuition is subtle, but clear. There's an ancient voice inside each of us. One not learned from books, heard in the news, or borrowed from others. It's intuition. That quiet but insistent feeling that says, go this way, even when the whole world points the opposite direction. Intuition doesn't shout, it whispers. And so, it's only heard by those brave enough to silence the outside world and listen to what comes from within. How many times in your life have you had a hunch you couldn't explain? Felt you shouldn't go, that something wasn't right, or that a person wasn't what they seemed, only for it all to make sense later? That's intuition, a knowing that comes before reasoning. It doesn't argue, it simply feels. And it's almost always right. But for intuition to speak clearly, we must clear the ground. We must mute the noise of fear, anxiety, others' opinions, and past voices that taught us to distrust ours. Society has prized thinking so much that we've forgotten how to feel. And yet, it's feeling that saves us, guides us, reconnects us with our essence. In later years, this voice grows stronger. Not because it's louder, but because we've learned to listen better. We're no longer in a rush. We no longer seek constant approval. We no longer need to prove anything to anyone. And it's in this space of freedom that intuition flourishes. It appears in small moments when the body says rest, even with tasks unfinished. When the heart says call them, with no apparent reason. When the soul asks for silence, nature, solitude. Intuition is like a loyal friend who's always been by our side, even when ignored. And the beautiful part? It never holds a grudge. Even after being dismissed time and again, it remains there, ready to guide, protect, and care. And when we finally learn to trust it, the path brightens. Decisions feel lighter. Choices gain meaning, because they're no longer led by logic alone, but by the wisdom of feeling. It's worth remembering that intuition doesn't always lead us down the easiest path. Sometimes it urges us to close chapters, to let go of what no longer fits, to walk away from places and people who no longer resonate with who we've become. And that hurts. But it's the hurt of healing, like bitter medicine that cleanses from within. Intuition has that power. It knows what reason hasn't yet grasped. And speaking of reason, it matters too. But not alone. Intuition and reason don't have to clash. They can walk together like two sides of the same bridge. One shows the map, the other senses the terrain. And it's this union that leads to a life of greater integrity, wisdom, and alignment with who we truly are. If today you feel something inside you trying to speak, listen. Even if it makes no sense now, even if it seems strange, give that voice room to grow. Write it down, reflect, feel. In time it will all fit, Intuition never gets lost. We're the ones who wander from it. But all it takes is a moment of true attention to find it again. And remember, the more you honor your intuition, the stronger it becomes, the clearer it grows, and the surer your path will be. Because there's no truer guide than your own heart. The soul's wisdom never fails. You only need to allow yourself to listen. The people we love most speak without words. Over time, we learn that true love doesn't need to be shouted. It reveals itself in the quietest details, the simplest gestures, the glances that speak for themselves. We come to understand that those who truly love us may not say, "I love you," every day, but they're there when we need them most, even when we can't bring ourselves to ask. And it's in that silence, full of presence, that affection speaks the loudest. Maybe you felt it before, the squeeze of a hand from someone who didn't know how to comfort you but wanted to be close. Your favorite meal made without fanfare, just because they knew it was a hard day. A blanket draped over your feet on a cold night. The lingering gaze of a child who doesn't know how to express themselves in words but overflows with care in the way they watch you. These small acts, if we rush past them, might seem ordinary. But if we pause to feel them, they reveal a love so deep it's almost sacred. It's funny how, after a certain age, we start to realize that presence means more than any grand speech. Those who've lost someone important know this. What remains aren't the big declarations, but the subtle moments, shared silence on a porch, laughter on an ordinary afternoon, a hand on your shoulder as someone passes by the kitchen. And suddenly, when those people are gone, the world feels quieter. But inside us, they keep speaking. Without words, always, often in the deepest relationships, feelings aren't explained, they're felt. And no matter how many years pass, the heart holds onto these bonds like tattoos on the soul. The memory of a grandmother humming softly while cooking, a father who said little but always fixed what was broken, a friend who called just to hear your voice. All of this is language. A language that doesn't need translation, because it's understood straight by the heart. It's also true that not everyone we've loved knew how to show it the way we hoped. Sometimes words failed, gestures didn't come as we wished. But even then, if we look with compassion, we might see the signs, the effort to be present, even without knowing how. The attempt to get it right, even while afraid of getting it wrong, because human love is imperfect. And yet, it's the most precious thing we have. Today, maybe you're quieter. Maybe there are fewer people around. Maybe you speak less than you used to, but still you love, and you are loved. And it shows in the way your eyes light up when you hear a story that moves you, in the care you take folding an old piece of clothing that reminds you of someone, in the time you give to listen, to comfort, to hold space, even when no one notices. You're still speaking, even without saying a word. And if there's someone you love deeply, and maybe don't know how to tell, remember this. Often, the most important thing is just to be there. To look into their eyes, to hold their hand, to listen with your whole self. True presence speaks louder than 1,000 words. Sometimes the greatest "I love you" is the coffee made without being asked, the waiting by the door until they arrive, the patience to listen to the same story for the 5th time. At its core, love is a silent language. And those who live with an attentive heart know how to listen. They know that to love is to be fully present, even in silence. That to love is to understand, even without knowing everything. That to love is to stay, even when words fail. So don't worry if today you don't have much to say. What you feel, if it's real, is already being spoken in the quiet acts of care, in the way you show up, in the time you give. The people we love most, and who love us in return, speak without words. And when we listen with our hearts, we never feel alone. And if you've made it this far, pausing to breathe between one memory and the next, between silence and sigh. Then something inside you has been touched. Maybe it has no shape, no name, but you felt it. Felt that life speaks differently to those who've lived much. And even in its whispers, it still has so much to say. You're not alone on this journey. Here, in this space, you'll always find words that don't rush, that don't shout, but that embrace, that welcome, that respect your time, your story, your silence. So I invite you, with an open heart, if this resonated with you, subscribe to the channel, but not just to receive new videos. Subscribe to continue this walk from within. To remind yourself, whenever you forget, that your life has value, that your story matters, that there is beauty even today waiting to be felt. Leave a comment below. Tell me what you heard today. Not with your ears, with your soul. And if you know someone who needs to hear these words, share this video. It in the midst of someone's silence, the embrace they've been missing. Life is still speaking to you. It still wants to teach you, but only those who dare to listen with their hearts will hear. Come back whenever you need. Calm. Company. Truth. I single quotes LLB here. Waiting. In silence, but present, exactly as love does.